By now, you've seen what it's like to create an HTML page with a simple text editor. You might wonder if you can use editors such as Microsoft Word or Google Docs instead, and if that would be easier. The short answer is no. You should not use word processing applications to write HTML. There are code editors that are designed for writing code. And the one that we'll be using in this course is Microsoft Visual Studio Code, or VS Code. VS Code is a free and open source code editor. It is highly recommended among web developers because it is feature-rich, yet still fast and lightweight. By the way, Microsoft also publishes an app called Visual Studio IDE, which is not the same as Visual Studio Code, so don't confuse the two. In this course and all of NewCamp's bootcamps, we use VS Code and do not provide support for the use of other editors. However, if you wanted to take a look at other editors, two other popular code editors are called Atom and Sublime. At this point in your week, you should have already installed VS Code as a part of your setting up your development environment. If you haven't, do so now by going to the Course Setup section in the Learning Portal. Then click on the Set Up Your Development Environment book, then the Install Visual Studio Code chapter. Follow the instructions there, making sure to check these 4 boxes shown here if you're on Windows. If you're on macOS, make sure to follow these instructions here. I'm going to take you on a brief tour of VS Code. In Windows, I'm going to open VS Code by typing Visual into my search bar on the bottom left, then selecting it from the results. In macOS, it should be in your Applications folder. Then in VS Code, the first thing I want to do is show you how to enable autosave. It's in the File menu here, and I advise you to turn it on. Otherwise, you'll have to save your files manually, and you risk losing unsaved work. A checkbox will show up like this when it's enabled. By default, autosave will save your work once every second. Next, notice that from the File menu, you can open a single file, or you can open an entire folder, or even something called a workspace. For our purposes, we will want to use the Open Folder option always. You can open a single file instead of an entire folder, but if you do, a lot of the functionality of VS Code would not be available to you. All through this course, I will be asking you to open the course folder in VS Code rather than any particular file. You can open VS Code by itself, then open a folder from the File menu, as you see here. Another way to open a folder in VS Code in Windows is through File Explorer. I can go to the folder I want to open, then right-click on it and choose Open with Code. I can also open a folder from inside it by right-clicking on an empty area inside a folder and choosing Open with Code. In macOS, by default, you can't get a context menu on a folder, but you can drag and drop a folder from Finder into the VS Code icon on the dock to open the folder that way. This tab here is called the Explorer. You can toggle it open or closed by clicking on this icon. There are some more tabs available to you from here. We won't be using all of them, but let's look at a couple that are of interest. This one allows you to search the files inside this folder. And this one allows you to install extensions, which add more functionality to VS Code. This extensible nature of VS Code is one of its biggest selling points. You can see that I have several extensions installed already. You will install an extension yourself soon. Let's go back to the Explorer tab and look at how we can create new files and folders. I can create a new file in this folder by hovering next to the folder name, then clicking the New File icon that appears, like so. I'll need to type in a name for the file here. And I can also create a new subfolder, like so. And I'll need to give it a name here as well. If I click the New File icon while a subfolder or one of the files inside it is highlighted, then it will create the new file inside that subfolder, as you can see. Well, it might be a little hard to see, but you can tell that it's inside the subfolder because of the level of indentation over to the right. If I want to create a new file inside the main folder, then I have to click either on one of the files at the root level or somewhere in this blank space, like this. Then I can use the New File icon to create a file inside the main folder. I've made a mistake in the name. There should be just one L at the end here. If I want to fix that, I can right-click on the file or folder and rename it, like this. You can split the screen if you want to look at two files at the same time, like this. Or even more than two if you like. You can use the View menu to change the layout as well. Take some time to look through the menus and familiarize yourself with the options, even if you don't quite know what they mean yet. Note the available keyboard shortcuts. For example, this Edit menu shows me that I can use Ctrl-H to access the Replace function. Then I can use the Replace function to, for example, in helloworld.html, I can replace every instance of H2 with H1. By default, VS Code will automatically complete HTML start tags with end tags for you. It recognizes that this file has an HTML extension, so it knows that I want to write HTML. If I type a head elements start tag, for example, you see how it automatically just filled in the head elements end tag. And it's smart enough to know that if I use a void element, it doesn't need an end tag. If I type meta here, for example, it won't make an end tag for me. It will also do the same with other common pairs encoding. For example, if I type a double quote, it will add the second double quote for me. Also notice that if I hover my mouse over any of these HTML elements, then I get a brief definition about what it is, and a link I can click on to get more information. There are many other helpful features of VS Code, but this should get you started. As you continue on your learning journey as a web developer, I encourage you to read up more about VS Code and what it has to offer, such as its debugger, workspaces, terminal, and source control. But this would be too much information for you now. I've included a couple of links in the additional resources you may want to bookmark and return to at a later time. In the following exercise, we'll go on to create an HTML document. Then I'll walk you through installing a VS Code extension called Live Server.